Greetings, Princeps. Welcome to the God Engine Cast, a podcast dedicated to discussing the Adeptus Titanicus wargame produced by Games Workshop. In this week's show, I am going to be discussing a few games I recently played in Texas with my occasional co-host, Lucas. A few weeks ago, I was fortunate enough to be able to drive down to Lucas's house, where he gracefully hosted me for a few games, and I got to fight against a Warmaster with my Knight household. In this episode, I'm going to sit down and talk to him about these games. We played two, a large, epic clash game with his Warmaster versus my Knight household, and then a smaller skirmish game with my Legio Incarnum versus Legio Crucius. And with all that said, let's get on with the show. As always, a huge thanks to those individuals who subscribe to my Patreon or make one-time donations through my Ko-Fi account. Your support of this podcast is fantastic, and to everyone else, the links are found in the show notes to these two wonderful sites. In addition, I'm always looking for support in the form of reviews and in-person recommendations and just general liking and sharing of my material. This spreads the awareness, which grows my community, which is really good for the show. So thank you to everyone who's been doing this. Thank you to all those who have subscribed to my Patreon and Ko-Fi accounts. Links for both those places can be found in the show notes. Let's move on. Okay, with all that said, let's get to the main section of today's show, a conversation with my occasional co-host, Lucas. Me and Lucas jump straight into this. So, here's me and Lucas talking about the recent games we played down in Texas. Let's start at the top. What have you been working on since last time you were on the show? I think it's just the Warmaster, really, isn't it?
Yeah, I finished the Warmaster. I kind of got a mad dash to get it done for our game, and that was a really good time. I need to go back and just do a couple little details, but overall, so I'm happy with that. I've been working on some 30K stuff, but not as serious as I should be considering all the events coming up.
Yeah, the taps are open, games are everywhere. I just got literally a message a second ago saying that someone's running Titanicus at the LVO.
Yeah, I saw that.
It's really nice. It feels like we've actually got things to look forward to finally.
Yeah, I don't usually make it to the LVO. It's a little bit historically, I'm not a 40K guy. I'm really just 30K, and they're just Titanicus. They haven't run Titanicus there until now, and the 30K there is a little bit more competitive than I usually like to play. So, good luck to them.
Yeah,
anything is better than nothing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm really hyped to hear about it because it's a big con to have it and be the first major we've got back.
Like I said, exactly. I'm not really super pumped about competitive stuff, but if there are people that are, it's good that there are events that they can go to, because it kind of I'm not even saying I want to keep them separate, but it kind of scratches their itch.
Mm-hmm.
So, because there's going to be overlap. There's going to be people that prefer competitive but go to narrative events because that's all that there is.
Yeah.
And the fact that there is competitive events maybe helps them kind of keep their more competitive edge to that, and then the narrative events a little bit more mild.
I mean, it's looping around to the sort of first topic. We was talking about the games we got to play when I went down to Texas 2 weeks ago. Yeah. I actually found both those games to be really competitive. And that's the beauty of Titanicus. You can have a narrative game and it still be a balanced game mostly.
Right. There wasn't anything in there that was that's a little bit, immersion breaking or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
It was pretty standard stuff. But yeah, it was, once you get into the meat of the game, it's really strategic and really competitive. Mm-hmm. We played 2 games.
Yeah.
Because of some weather, you had got down here kind of late, so we weren't sure if we were going to get down, and we weren't sure if we were going to get into 2 games.
Yeah.
Which is what we had kind of planned, but you brought a bunch of great looking terrain, and then we set up for we did a 2500. It was 2500, right? And 1250.
Yep.
Yeah. 25. So, what's it called? Epic Clash and Skirmish.
Skirmish. Yep. I actually only run 2350 on that one. I came in about 200 points light.
A little bit low. Yeah, but at that level, you have to be really low to get the underdog bonus, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have to
Yeah.
be like 300 or 350 or something.
Yeah. I was.
Not quite that low. But it sometimes can be hard to fill out points with the knights because the knights they're kind of expensive. Like they still are.
I used a knight I sold in the first game. My big push, which if anyone's been following me on Facebook or Instagram, they would have seen me painting 10 Cerastus Lancers and the other types in a big push to get them all done for the game. So I was fielding 2 Lances, Banner Porphyrions, and then 2 Freeblade units of Cerastus, which is a lot of units for a game of Titanicus.
Yeah, they all looked great. It is a lot of units, but that you had strangely low activations because of the Lance rule.
Yeah, Lancers are weird. It's the Legio Audax problem. You start squadroning up, basically.
Right. And you lose all your activations. So what did I bring? I brought a Mandatum Maniple, which is the one with the Warbringer that can ignore line of sight, basically, with all its guns. If you have a Warhounds that can see. So I brought a Warbringer with a Quake Cannon. I brought 3 Warhounds, one of which had dual Vulcans that did absolutely nothing. One had dual Plasma, and one had... No, I didn't bring the laser one. I just brought the 2. I brought a dual Plasma and a dual Vulcan. And then I brought a Warlord with a Fist and a Plasma. And then I brought the Warmaster. And I had armed it with shoulder Plasma.
The Warmaster, yes.
So I had the Revelator, the arm plasmas, the suzerains, and then the shoulder plasma blaskets, which I think is a pretty solid loadout, but it's still like there really isn't a super good way to strip shields with the Warmaster. You have to synergize it with something else. I know stripping shields wasn't a problem in this game.
No.
But it would be in a game with more Titans. So I think... Like, because the Vulcans just aren't that good because of the range. I don't want to be that close most of the time.
Yeah, I mean, just starting with the observations. So, just a quick overview of the game before we get into the observations of units is probably the best way to do it.
Sure.
First 2 turns, my knights advance across the table. First turn, my knights advance across the table incredibly quickly. But I flubbed an order, so one of my flanks didn't advance.
Yeah, and that was critical. Because it kind of let you hit me piecemeal and let me like kind of deal with one thing and then move to deal with the other thing.
Yeah, so I had a Lance of Cerastus moving up the left flank, a Knight of Questoris moving up the right flank. The Questoroses just didn't arrive when I needed them to. So turn 2 was a giant charge of the Cerastus. Turn 3 was a charge of the Questoris.
And they actually did really well.
Yeah, I mean, the Questoris did the work and took out the Warmaster. But at the end of the game, all my knights were gone, and I'd only won because I needed to kill the Warmaster for victory points.
Yeah.
So.
And I had like turned the Warmaster to face the Cerastus knights to get shots on them, which allowed you to charge basically the rear of the Warmaster, which was helpful. But I don't even know that you would have needed that. Even if you had gotten a side charge, I think you could have done it.
No, because I still reckon I could have got a Questoris around the back.
Yeah, that's what, but even if you couldn't get them all in the rear and you just got some in the side, I still think you would have done it.
Well, yeah.
It's still pretty vulnerable to melee.
Yeah.
So what we had played Open War, right? We played the deployment with like the 2 boxes that are like in the corners across from each other.
Yep.
And then the mission was kind of basically just kill points.
Yeah, it was actual based on the amount of points you take.
Yeah, percentages.
Yep, percentage of the enemy army, and if you got to 75% of the enemy force destroyed, you got the maximum number of victory points, which we both managed to pull off.
Yep. It's probably due to 1,200 point unit.
Yes, yeah, and then
or whatever, my secondary 50 or something like that.
My secondary was taking out 2 Titans of my choice, which was the Warlord and Warmaster, which are the 2 I focused fired on.
And then I had my secondary was to take out your Seneschal's Lance.
Yep.
Which I misread, and I thought it was this, or your High King or whatever.
Yeah.
I thought it was the banner that he was in, but it's his whole lance.
Yeah.
And so it like gave you more points the faster you did it. And I didn't actually kill his whole lance until like turn 3. He had like 1 knight left. So I didn't get the bonus points.
Yeah, and I spent a couple of stratagems on additional victory points.
Yeah,
taking out
because
the
you had an
big
insane
Titan.
amount of stratagems. You had like 10 points or something.
Oh, yeah, I mean, I think I got to 12.
Yeah, and I only had 4 because
yeah,
I don't
and,
get a bonus for you picking Legio.
and currently knights really struggle to spend them because they don't have that many stratagems to take.
Right, because it's still not super clear about what stratagems they can take.
Yeah, my interpretation, it's just the ones from the Doom of Molech book.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah. I'm not sure if Games Workshop have had a clear idea of it as they went, so...
Why? Because like that would mean like they can't take strafing run, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why?
Yeah.
Just as an example, you know what I mean? There's some that it doesn't make sense for them to take, but I think my opinion is they should be able to take pretty much anything. I mean, as long as it like, you know, the wording on the cards can be the limiting factor where the wording can apply to only Titans or only Knights or both. Yeah. And that can be the limiting factor rather than just limiting what they even have access to.
Yeah, and then the core ones that the core stratagems out the core book that they replace in the Doom and Molech books are good sort of replacement because that replaces the Titan specific ones. A little bit of FAQ work needs to be done, especially the thermal mines that are still strength 10 with them because they have a different name than the thermal mines.
I noticed that.
In FAQ. Yeah.
Yeah, I noticed that. I wasn't too mad about it, but I was like, what? Oh.
Yeah. I felt kind of bad
those
pulling
on
that one
me,
off.
I think.
Yeah, I did. I was like, they haven't been
What are
FAQ'd.
they called? They're called plasma mines instead.
Plasma mines, yeah.
But maybe because of the limited amount of stratagems they have access to, maybe like having better ones is not really that big a deal. Because I really didn't feel like it was a super gotcha.
No,
kind of thing.
I didn't feel bad because I was fighting a Warmaster.
Yeah, it wasn't really. I didn't really feel like I was like, oh, that's really cheesy of you. I really didn't feel like that. So I think it was fine.
Yeah. So no, the stratagems were kind of key, and I've talked about that in the last episode about all the stratagems the knights can have, and yeah, they are key on making a knight force work, but at the same time, you're kind of best just investing in the victory point ones because I needed it at the end to win the game.
Yeah, it is what won you the game.
Yeah.
Because I thought about taking tertios, and then I ended up playing the stratagems really poorly. I brought a macro cannon, which was actually pretty clutch because I knew you had to come over there to me. So I liked that. That was pretty cool. It did a bit of work. Yeah, it killed a couple knights, like 1 or 2. And then I took the stratagem that lets you like shoot again, right? You like activate it in the combat phase and you can basically make a whole set of attacks and everything, but then you roll on the reactor overload, which I know has a chance of blowing up. So obviously the perfect time to use that is when you're probably already going to blow up anyway. Right? But I never got to use the stratagem because there was never like a good time to use it. Every time I looked at something, I blew it away.
Yeah. Well, I think that's because I came in piecemeal, there wasn't a point where you needed overwhelming firepower.
Yeah.
I think if I'd got the Questoris up on that flank, you had a Warhound that was on the flank with that Plasma Blast Gun, and if you decided to double tap that Warhound,
that really Plasma Blast Guns, the business.
Yeah. Plasma Blast Guns do work on knights. And the same with the Warbringer with the Quake Cannon.
That's what I should have used it on, was the Warbringer. Because so I had the Warbringer like behind a building, couldn't see. It still could a little bit, but like basically I was using the trick, right? And in the turn which it was critical for me to shoot your Questoris Knights to stop them from charging me in the rear because the Quake Cannon will shake them, you played the Blind Barrage on me, which was a good strat, right? Because that means that I basically can't use the -2, like I can't use the no line of sight shot because I'll be -4 total and I couldn't shoot. But the problem with that was I still could see you, so I still did get to shoot you, but I missed. And then the one guy I hit, I rolled a 1 and did nothing. So I should have used that strat. Oh, but it was on first fire, so I couldn't use it anyway. I had to use it in the combat phase. So I literally never had a time to use the strat. So I don't rate that strat very high.
Yeah, no.
But
no, it's
I was
an odd
trying to pick something I don't usually play with. So yeah, but ultimately the Warmaster, like, what did it do? It focused fire on some Porphyrons and just blew them right away, like no problem, right?
Yeah. So yeah, the Warmaster took out the Porphyrians in turn 1.
Yeah.
Without a sweat.
No. It had more guns left to shoot after. Like, I didn't even get to shoot everything. I had everything lined up on them. And I had actually split fire, I think, and I shot the blast gun at something else.
Yeah, you critically damaged the one of the free blade units.
Yeah. And then I thought about, like, I shot the suzerains. I shot both of them at the Porphyrons. And the first one, I think the first one did it.
Yeah.
Maximal fired and got 2 17s. Because you get 17s on a 4+ if you maximal fire.
Uh-huh. Yeah. I mean, they just didn't stand a chance.
Yeah, and then so I didn't even get to shoot. I never shot the Revelator missile launcher. I have no idea if that thing's any good because I never shot it. It was, you were either too close or you were already dead by the time I was ready to shoot it.
The next turn, it unloaded on the giant lance of Questoris and mulched most of them.
No, I had turned it around and shot the Lancers because you were like already up in my business. I think I used the dominant strategist to like steal the initiative from you and like countercharge you basically. I had put a charge on my warlord with the fist. And that worked out okay, but then you just basically ran around behind me. But that worked. That worked pretty good.
Yeah.
I thought.
Yeah, I mean, I was trying to think of a better way for you to have played that, but I think the countercharge was the best move because it really scuppered me up because my knights couldn't go anywhere.
Yeah. And it also like one of the problems with the knights is that if the enemies are like too far apart, you can like speed bump the knights and then they have to just stand there for a little while and then you can shoot them and yeah, you probably lost whatever they charged, but you were probably going to lose that anyway. So it's not really a big loss. So I think like pushing the warlord further forward with the charge, it also takes attacks away from you because you don't get to charge as far. Sometimes, depending on the circumstances.
Yeah, I made a mistake with that I shouldn't have done because you were able to charge my High King straight off.
Yeah, which I wanted to go for because that was my secondary. You didn't know that, but
You just popped the High King on the first before he even got to move, so I should have screened him with the other lance unit. But
yep. But you could still just shoot him down.
yeah, you could have done that.
He's pretty vulnerable. Like he gives you a lot of bonuses, and like when you kind of first see him on paper, it's like, oh, this guy's really strong. He gives you like the reroll ones and all these bonuses, but then he's really vulnerable. You can just shoot him dead, and he really does his work in close combat where he has to like be exposed. And yeah, I think it's pretty well balanced.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of people talking about trying to put the High King in the Bavarians, especially now they've allowed that again.
Yeah, that has its own problems.
Because against a Titan battle group, the Bavarians will disappear as soon as you look at them, like you proved.
Not always. It depends on what the opponent has.
But if they got any high strength plasma,
yeah, or like Bellicosa, or and you never even got to order the Porphyron.
Nope.
Like, I shot him with Quake as soon as possible. You failed your order in the first turn, and then I quaked them and then blew them away. Like,
yeah,
which is, I had no choice.
Oh yeah,
they're still really good. They're really expensive now, but they're still like really solid. And I had Warhounds out there running around that could just get aced by them pretty easily. So.
Oh yeah, if they hadn't been quaked that first turn, they
probably would have killed my Warhound.
Yeah, because they had an open shot on a Warhound, and they were able to strip its shields, but not do any additional work.
Yeah, they did. They put like a couple pips on it, but nothing really notable.
They've been quaked before that, and if they hadn't had that quake hit, they'd have probably been able to completely nuke that Warhound in one shot.
Yeah, so I basically ran my Warhound around my left, so where your Questoris were, and I hid it behind a building so that you couldn't like hard flank me, which you ended up not really needing to. And then I had the other Warhound kind of in the back. It was more like my line of sight boat, right? I just kind of kept it back there because with the Mandatum Maniple, you don't actually need range on the units. You just need to be able to see them. So I kept it where it had line of sight on basically anything I would need to shoot with the Quake Cannon on the Warbringer, so I could, do that. And then I had my Warlord right next to it, and then I had the Warbringer right in the middle, which I don't know was the play. I think the Warbringer plays really well when you run it up one side.
Yeah, if it had been hanging out where if the Warbringer and Warmaster had been on opposing flanks, that would have caused me hassle.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's like every game I play, I probably could have deployed better. I think that's probably my weakest part of my gameplay.
Especially against Knights, because they got one good charge.
But my deployment zone was small compared to like the bases. Like I had a lot of like big base. It doesn't even matter though, because even like a Warhound is on a fairly sizable base.
Yeah, and that's
your deployment zone was packed.
It's my one big criticism with these open war cards. The deployment zones are awfully small.
Some of them.
And yeah, there isn't a good mechanic in Titanicus for what happens when you don't put a unit on the table.
Yeah, there's like no reserves.
Uh-huh.
So you could like use the outflank stratagem, but that kind of sucks.
Yeah, whereas in all their other games, if you don't deploy something in the unit, it comes off on your table edge during the following turn.
Yeah.
And I can't help but think that the game designers were designing the deployment zones based on the thoughts they had about other games. They look very similar to some of the 40k deployment zones.
Well, I also think that they were designing the open war deployment zones based on a certain points level that they didn't, quote unquote, meant to be played, but then they won't tell you what that is. So because there's no sizing the tables up to 4x6 to play like big games in the open war. It's like all on 4x4, which is fine, but it kind of needs a little bit more direction on like what it's designed to be compatible with.
Yeah. So I didn't think we needed the 6x6 on that epic game. I mean, we got into the action really quickly, but
yeah, I don't really
nice.
think so either. I'm not saying that even games of that size, especially with the low model counts or low activation counts we both had, I think it was fine. But if like I had brought like all Warhounds.
Oh gosh, yeah. Yeah, the game played fairly quickly. We got it done in about an hour, 2 hours and a half, I think. Probably 3 for the little queso break we had.
Yeah, we had a little break for lunch. But I think it really, a lot of the slowdown in the game is like, well, what does this do again? And this and that. And we're pretty on top of it. There was a couple times we had to stop and be like, what's the rule for this or whatever. But for the most part, like, it's like, all right, pick a unit, shoot it, good to go. We don't need to stop and check the rule book.
Yeah, and it's always all Knight-related stuff, which doesn't surprise me because I was running.
Right, and I've only played against Knights, like a Knight household, I think this is the second time, and I've played with it one time whenever it first came out, but I'm certain that when I played with it, I completely bumbled it. Like, I'm certain I didn't do it right. What are your like overall thoughts on the Warmaster after having faced it? Like, it's not...
It was worth the points that it cost. It's well priced. Because yours was 1,000.
Yeah, mid like 11. I think it's like 1130 or 1150 or something like that. I have like one of the more. I was using one of the more expensive builds because the Plasma Blast gun is the most expensive gun, and I didn't take any war gear on it. I could have like pumped it up with war gear, but I found that when I put it into my list, I was like almost halfway to 2,500, and I was like, "Ooh, that's so many points." And so I was having trouble finding another mana pool. I wanted to run it and Extergimus, whatever you call it, but it's not really possible at 2,500.
I had to dedicate the entirety of my battle force to take it out. Anytime I had a shot on it, I had to take it, and I also had to pull a stratagem off to really get it to the point where I could take it out, because I took it out through its legs, and that started with those.
No, I think it was body damage, actually. The body is still relatively vulnerable because the direct hit it's high, like it's a 13, but it only, a lot of them are like 13, 14 or 13, 14, 15. The direct hit on the Warmaster is only 13. Like it's one number, and then the devastating is 14, 15, 16, and then the critical is 17, I think. I may be one off.
Yeah, that's right, because I started on the legs, and then I was like, plinking this to death is going to be easier on the body, and I sort of
it already,
switched.
when you charged it, it already had a little bit of body damage from something else.
Yeah, and I never took its shields down.
No, you got like one pip off that I was able to repair, and then I think you did another pip that I was able to repair. Like, it has so many servitors that the shields are really, really powerful.
Yeah, and you running Legio Crucius as well. It was just.
So I think, like, you know, the days where like there's a lot of times where you like shoot the double Vulcans at something, and you're like, all right, the shields are down. Like, maybe not on that. And I know sometimes a warlord can tank that too, but like, and then I didn't use the reactor thing. I didn't even use that. I never really felt like I was really hot, which I know I have Legio Crucius, so like that obviously helps. For the 6s can cool 2 heat instead of 1, and then in the first 2 turns, which is all it was really alive, it died in like turn 3. It can reroll 1s, or they can all reroll 1s on the repair rolls. So like I get like a lot of bonuses for it, but even if I had none of that, I still don't think I would have even touched the orange.
No, you were doing so well with it in that first.
Yeah, so I felt like it was worth it, but also really expensive for what it is. Like, it's somehow both, just because it's so many points on one activation. It's a whole mana pool by itself.
Yeah, and it brings the firepower of a mana pool. No, it is going to struggle like hell with Warhound heavy lists.
It depends on the missions. If it has to go over there and get to them, it's going to struggle. But if it can stay back and like let them come over to it, I don't think it's as bad, nearly as bad.
The problem you were having was that split fire doesn't allow you to turn.
Yes, that is a problem. That's why I thought that maybe putting it like on the flank where it doesn't have to turn is better, or doesn't have to turn as much.
And in which case, it's going to be basically having to stay stationary.
It can move a little bit, like back or forward, but yeah, it basically has to stay stationary.
Yeah, as soon as you start having to move that Titan, the amount of Titans it can, because it's almost better to do first fire on it.
Yep, so it can like shoot one thing and like blow it away, and then move all its guns to something else.
Yeah, maybe using the loyalist trait once per game to switch the first fire to split fire, so that one turn you can shoot.
Use that strat where I could like put it on full stride and then move it however I wanted in the movement phase, and then I could have changed the order to split fire it in the shooting phase. That actually would have been way better than turning it completely around.
Yeah, because even though you wouldn't have you need to give it an order in that first phase to switch to split fire after you've done your movement.
Or you could even put it on charge, because charge also lets you turn at the beginning of your move. You can even put it on charge. You could even put it on. I could have like put it on charge, ran up, stomped you, and then changed it to split fire too. Like that would have worked too. I didn't even think about that. I always forget that allegiance ability.
Yeah, and you kind of I mean, if you're running a traitor variant, you're gonna struggle as well. Taking the warp displacement is what I would look at, which is the ability to move the Titan by 2d6 in a direction. Yeah, because I mean, when the Warmaster came out, I thought it was going to be more maneuverable than a Warlord, which it is.
It is, except for the fact that you need to split fire all the time.
And you've sunk so many of your points into that one unit.
Yeah, because it's 3 turns on the push. It's 1 turn base, 3 turns on the push. So it is slightly more maneuverable than a Warlord, but a lot of times it's difficult to actually, in practice, put those additional turns to use.
Yeah, and you'll only be doing that if you're fighting people with Warlords and another Warmaster. So the second game was a skirmish game, basically the same table.
So, and then it was kind of, we wanted to play a smaller game because you kind of had to leave to get back to your house before ridiculously late in the evening. So that was, but it was good. What did you bring?
I took a Fire Wasp mana pool of 3 Reavers, so my Corsair, dual Volcano Cannon, my Close Combat Reaver, which is a Chain Fist, a Macro Cannon, and a not Vulcan Mega Bolter, and then my Workhorse Reaver of a Melter, and both styles of laser.
Which I don't rate very highly, but it did pretty good. I like it. It's not too bad. And the Rifleman Reaver is pretty cool too, the double Volcano.
Once again, proved that it's a really good build.
I'm so bad with the names on the maniples. I'm sorry. I took the maniple with the Warlord and the 3 Warhounds, where it's like you get bonuses to command checks for the Warhounds. So I knew the command checks. I knew I didn't really want to squadron the Warhounds, so I knew the command checks were going to be a problem, which I didn't really end up using because I didn't really do a lot of orders. I did a lot of first fire orders, which I don't really enjoy as much. Like, sitting there and just shooting isn't super fun. But and then you also get +1 to hit if you're shooting something within 12 inches of the Warlord, which I literally never used one time. I don't know if there was ever. I used it once.
Yeah, when I started really closing in on your Warlord at the end of the game.
Okay. Well, I don't know if it. That really wasn't worth it. But the +1 to command checks was pretty good because you played a stratagem which gave you - to command check.
Yeah, I threw because we're playing on an industrial world, so we got additional stratagems as long as we put it on assets. So I dropped the 1-point command bastion asset, and because we had a really cool deployment zone that was wedges that the deployment zones were touching.
Yes, so we could have been in combat, in close combat at the first turn easily, but I didn't want that because you had combat and I didn't. So
I had a banner of a Castus Knight, so I took all my free blades, so I had one of each type. Cerastus. And they burnerized one of your hounds. They died, and the flamer survived. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's right. They did flamer me because I thought I was out of range, and it turns out I wasn't. So that was cool.
And his flamer took out your entire shields in one hit. Because I cursed Earth. Because I was
right. That's what I was thinking. The cursed Earth. So what does that do again? It's like 1 extra shield save whenever you have to take shield saves?
Yeah, it basically gives every weapon Void Breaker, and increases the strength of weapons when determining Knight Ion Shields.
Right. It does what it says on the tin and screwed you over as much as me. So that was fun. It was kind of cool, though. It would have been even worse if it was paired, because isn't there an open war card that does the same thing? Yeah, terrible paired with that. So you're shooting I would not want to do that. And it makes those laser blasters way better. When you do the shield bane, it turns it gives you extra shot and all kinds of stuff. And it automatically hits. Basically, it's an extra shot that automatically hits. So that's good.
Yeah, my mistake with I take it a lot, but you take it when you're the side that can live without shields. So quite often I'll take it when I'm running my Fortis Maniple, which is the Warlord and Reavers, which gain armor bonuses.
Yep, and they can share.
And I can share shields
too. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm just my shields are strong. I don't care. You don't have that extra resilience. This weights in my favor.
Yeah, but it was still pretty fun, to play with. We did a good job remembering it. I feel like it's something that's easy to forget. And so, what did you do? You had 1 Reaver that was back in the corner, the Rifleman.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 1 Reaver hung out in one corner. My other 2 Reavers came up the other flank
to kind of gang up on the Warlord.
Yeah, and the Knights just tried to charge straight into Warhound, and they died horribly, but they took out the Warhound, basically, because they flamed the shields away, and then the Rifleman popped it with 2 volcano cannon shots.
Yep, that sounds right. And then I had kind of one of my Warhounds, so I had a Turbo Laser Warhound, a Plasma Blast Gun Warhound, and a Vulcan Mega Bolter Warhound, and then my Warlord had Roof Gatlings, Arm Gatling, and a Plasma. I love the Gatling Blast and tracking gyroscopes. the best. I also took Bastion shielding on all the Warhounds and then never used it, so that was cool.
Yeah, but you never were in a good position to use them. That was the problem.
No, not really.
Because you were, it was never worth pushing your shields because I either got you completely messed up or it just wasn't enough hits.
Right. But you get a push for free, so you might as well have used it, even if it's not that worth it. But anyways, it's not a big deal.
Yeah, those roof Gatlings on the Warlord, I don't see them much up here in Oklahoma, and I wasn't prepared.
They're good.
They are, especially with the tracking gyroscopes.
Yeah. Although I really like the tracking gyroscopes did obviously help, but I could have just pointed at you. There wasn't really it wasn't that big a difference, I don't think.
Not in a game where you had the activational. Because you hadn't squadroned your Warhounds, so you have more activations.
Yeah, I decided not to squadron. I decided not to squadron the Warhounds because I knew that I didn't want to be disadvantaged in the activation game. And I know that the Reaver's armor isn't that strong. So I didn't feel like the +1 was going to give me as big of an advantage as it would against some other stuff. Like, you really kind of need it against Warlords and the Warmaster, I feel. But against the Reaver, I feel like you can do without it.
You demonstrated it pretty well that you can do without it because you were able to put the Warhounds on my flanks of my Titans because you were able to activate them second. If you'd been activating them as a squadron, it would have been easier for me to keep you on my flank.
Right, in your front. Yeah, so you can basically offset the +1 armor bonus by getting in the side instead.
Which is kind of how you win the game, because even though I took out your Warlord, I wasn't able to finish those Hounds off because they were always just behind me.
And you had to come and focus on the Warlord because you can't ignore it. It's like the big baddie in the game, right? So you have to come and focus on it. And then once you took it out, you're out of position to do anything else.
Yeah. I just had that. I had the 2 Reavers left because I lost the close combat Reaver and the Knights, and I was fighting 3 Hounds.
2 Hounds. You had killed 1 Hound.
Oh yeah, I was fighting 2 Hounds, but both of them were effectively behind me by that point.
Yeah.
And I had turn 4, neither of my Titans could shoot you.
Yep. Yeah.
And that was the point where the game was lost for me, because.
Yeah, you had a point where you had to activate first, and you moved up, and I just moved around you out of your arc, and you're like, oh yeah, well.
Yeah, and even if I'd moved the other guy, you'd have done the same the other way. There was no way I could have just consolidated my arcs.
There wasn't a good play, so that was a really interesting game, though. I didn't expect when you kill my Warhound right off the rip. I was like, oh no, this is not good. But I didn't really expect to pull the win on it. And the win is kind of interesting, too, because it's also not super clear what happens when you actually table your opponent. Does the game immediately end? Because if it immediately ended, I think we tied. But if you get to keep playing with no enemies, then I can just run and grab the objectives and win. So I think there either needs to be a bonus points. Either the game needs to end and you need to get a certain amount of points for killing your opponent completely. I don't think it's fair to just give you max points in the mission.
No. Well, I think the line I like is the one the ITC use, which is once you table your opponent, you get the max points that you could score at that moment.
What does that mean?
So if you had objectives that you could only score by taking out an enemy a certain way, or by pushing an enemy off an objective, you can't score those, but you can score any objectives that you could theoretically score without the enemy being on the table.
If there's 3 objectives and you need to control them, but you only have 2 units, you only get 2? Okay. Basically, you look at what's actually physically possible for you to do, and you get those points. But there's also, the thought process of, what if all you had left was a Warlord, and he's immobilized, and you need to go get an objective? You theoretically can do it, but the likelihood in which you do it is very low. So that can be kind of tough. Because he could repair.
I think he could repair.
So who knows, right? But I don't know. it's not really ultimately that big a deal, so I don't know that we need to spend a ton of time like worrying about it.
Comp players would have to worry about it, and I'd suggest you just... in those circumstances, I suggest judges play it out, the roll the necessary repair dice.
Yeah, that's what I would do. That seems like both the easiest and like the fairest way to do it. Especially since it's obviously going to be really fast because you don't have an opponent you have to interact with. You just roll the dice and then move your stuff and go.
Yeah, and you can do both. Like if you've got 3 turns to go, you do both sets of movement at once. You just, can I get over there?
Okay.
No, that was a really fun game.
So you brought Cursed Earth, and then you brought the Command Bastion. Did you bring any other stratagems?
Yeah. I did. I used, but one of them I didn't use.
Okay, yeah, because I had one I didn't use either. I took the one where like you can automatically pass a command check, and I never used it because I never failed.
Yeah, I had the Legio Incarnate one that would allow me to fight Overwatch if you charged me.
I didn't plan on charging you, but
I didn't think you would, but it's a 1-point stratagem and it's really fun.
Yeah. And then, so the thing that I thought was like the most clutch for you was like this. What was it? It's like reroll ones to hit if you're close to me.
Yeah, that's Legio Incarnate's base trait.
It's super powerful.
It really is.
It's super powerful. So
yeah, that and their gain a bonus when you're in cover to hit is also really nice.
And the combination of both is really good.
Yeah, they are.
They're top tier.
They are really fun. I really enjoy playing them. Almost, I think they're too good. It's why I've got my Legio Volcanum now as well to mix it up, because I definitely don't want to run Traitor Fire Moth.
So that game was really fun as well. I ended up with the victory simply because you had no Titans left on the table to contest me after a certain point. But overall, like I'm loving the open war deck. Like obviously it's not perfect, and there was a couple things where you like drew something out of the deck and you were like, we've either already done this or I've done this before and I hated it. And so we just redrew, but I didn't think that was a problem.
No, I mean, if you're playing a friendly game, there are enough options in the deck that I sort of always have any of the particular, because you got the 4 sub decks, and I always play apart from the objectives or the secondary objectives, if you don't want to play with that card, just draw a new one and take that next one.
Yeah, basically, if either player has like a major objection to the card, just draw a new one.
Yeah, and just play with that whatever's drawn. And that basically ensures you get a game both players want to play. It's sufficiently random enough that you're going to get a unique game, but it also means you're not going to play the same old... Because there's still a chance you're still going to play, like... Generally, I discarded the card because I was like, I played that same combination in the game. Really recently. And I've always done that. I mean, I did that playing 40k all the time. You roll on the mission list. It's like, I played that last mission. Let's just roll again.
Right. Like, I kind of quit 40k, like, right after the open war cards came out, so I played a little bit with them, and that was easily the best way to do a mission, in my opinion, for 40k. And then 30k has a couple of fan-made open war decks, and I have one of those, and I really like that. So I think it's great.
I've been open war all the time for Age of Sigmar since I got my hands on it, and I think I came back, and it's just, yeah. And as I ran an Age of Sigmar narrative event a couple of years ago where every mission was just set to the open war cards, and that's what we're going to do for the Halo.
Yeah. I was going to ask you, but I didn't want to spoil the surprise if we didn't know that yet. But yeah, I think that's a really good idea because it's like obviously stuff that's already like exists and has already been, I don't know how play tested it is, but like it's quote unquote official. So you don't have that like problem where people are like, well, you just made this up and it sucks.
Yeah. So my plan is that every table will have a preset battlefield effect, and then the individual mission pack will be the deployment style and objective.
That's going to be cool too because the battlefield effects can be tailored to what the table has on it.
Yeah, it's what I did last year, and it worked. And it's what I did last year, and it worked pretty well. I need to tone down a few of the effects. The industrial table was a little awkward to play on because I had a pretty heavy smog effect on it. It was to compensate for the fact that there wasn't a huge amount of line of sight blocking scenery on it, but it went a little too far. So I think before we sort of close up, what do you think about the knights? Sort of going back to that, do you have any thoughts we haven't really touched on?
I think that every strength does have a drawback. I think that like the lance coherency thing is an easily overlooked but a major drawback. It makes your force have to be like contained in one area. You can't just send banners off willy-nilly. Obviously there's like some shenanigans with like the High King or the Seneschal or whatever where you can like ignore it and stuff like that. So like there is shenanigans, but overall I feel like that's like a huge limiting factor, and it makes it feel like everything that they get as a bonus has a check as well. There's some of the stuff that's like not super well put together. Like in my opinion, Lance shouldn't be shaken when there is only one banner left. That's kind of like, you physically cannot become within Lance coherency. Like it's not possible. So you should not have to suffer the ill effects, I don't think. Maybe like when you're the last banner, you have to take a test every turn to see if you're shaken because you got messed up. But like I don't feel like you should be automatically shaken. That's like my only thing about the rules that I find is like a glaring mistake, in my opinion.
Yeah. I think the Knight household as a completely would be fixed by you have to take a shaken test if you're out of coherency.
Maybe.
'Cause it would free you up from coherency just enough to allow you to split the units up a little bit more.
I think part of the balance is that you have to keep all your stuff together.
Yeah, but you'd still have to, because if you failed that shaken test, you'd be on a standard command check for a knight, which is like 50-50 shot.
I thought it was 3+ if you have your little sergeant dude.
No, it's a 4+ with the sergeant. It goes up when you put the other guys in.
But there is it's pretty easy to snipe the sergeants. Mm-hmm. What are they actually called?
And
Scion? Lord Scion?
Seneschal. Not Seneschal, Scions. Yes, because they're all Scions. High Scion. It's High Scions, Seneschals, High Kings.
Okay. So the High Scions, it's pretty easy to snipe them. Like with targeted attacks or even just by shooting them.
Yeah, I don't know. I think there's a way to do it mechanically that would make it a push your luck mechanic that would allow you to break them up. And would also then allow you to exist if you just had one banner left.
Yeah, that does seem to make more sense rather than just automatically shaken. Sometimes I think that the Quake Cannon shaking them automatically is a little bit too powerful as well. Like maybe that should also be a check. It's not automatic though. We did find that out, that you do actually have to damage them.
Yeah. My problem is not that it shakes them that turn, it shakes them the turn after. Because once you're shaken, you can't take an order.
Yeah, because their order is replaced by the check to see if they're unshaken.
And and then unshaking them requires.
Like almost like the unshaken should be at the end of the turn, like in the end phase. And then you can still fail it and then need to, be shaken again.
Yeah. Well, I think giving people the opportunity to take die in the end phase, allowing people to remove the shaken dice with a passive command check, and then allowing you to do it again in the order phase, but with that one with the penalty that you couldn't put another order dice on the card. It would basically mean shaken couldn't last that long, but there's a chance it would still hang around and screw you up.
Yeah. And you have to take a test every time a knight is removed to be shaken too?
Yeah.
Because I had kind of thought that it was like once every, like a morale check where like you have to take it at the end of the phase if a knight was removed, but it's every time. Do you think we're going to get... So we're obviously going to get a trader book, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that the fabled third book exists, where it has knights and Black Shield?
Well, I mean, I think the person coming up with that idea is me. I wouldn't be surprised to see them putting out a night book.
Now, whether Black Shields are included is a whole nother thing.
Yeah. I mean, Black Shields feel obvious to drop in there because they got to put them somewhere, unless they're included in the traitor book.
They could be, yeah.
Because they could do traitors and Black Shields all in one book. And
Yeah, because there's really not a ton for Black Shields. But they could also do, like, a night book that has, like, even more night stuff. And then they could do, like, another revision of the custom Legio rules with Black Shields as well. Whether they revise them or whether they just reprint them. Because right now I feel like they're pretty solid.
Yeah, I can't see them going near it. I think it wouldn't surprise me to find out the next, like, compilation book like the traitor book would be a book on knights.
Yeah, me neither. And I think they kind of need it. Because then they could also do, like, they could also fix the Acasta's stat line as well. Because I'm okay with where they're at points-wise, but it's still, like, their output is just ridiculous.
I think knights need to be taken back to the drawing board in many ways.
Yeah.
A lot of it's good, but I think it would be really nice just to have a book that includes a reprint of every card.
I don't know that I want version 2.0.
Well, no, I just mean of knights.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I don't know, because I think a lot of the knights are in a good place. The problem I have right now with, like, Cerasus is that the Lancer is, like, the obvious front runner. Like, there is basically no reason to take the others.
No, and the Flamer's okay.
It's okay at best.
The Flamer's got play. A Flamer Cerastus Free Blade Lance is good. Puts out a lot of shots. Because their Chain Fist's pretty good as well.
Yeah, it is. It is. But losing the shield.
Yeah, but that's what I say. You mix them up.
And the shield has a gun.
Yes.
For some reason.
Yeah, but it's things like that that just need to, like, knights have the most, like, additional bits of power than the stuff in 40k.
What does that mean?
Like the Porphyrion having blast on the cannon.
Yes. Which
shouldn't have blast.
Theoretically, if you, like, look at we'll use 30k stats because it's the most inaccurate.
Yeah.
Like, you know, the best analog to Titanicus because of the blasts. Everything that's large blast in 30k is single shot in Titanic.
Mm-hmm.
Except for the Night Porphyrion.
Yep.
Because, like, a laser blaster is large blast. That's another thing, too, is that in 30k, a Porphyrion is only strength 10, and a laser blaster is strength D, but they're both the same strength in Titanicus. Whereas stuff that's strength 10 in 30k is usually like strength 6 in Titanicus.
Yeah. It needs if the Porphyrion came down in strength and lost its blast, it would be still really useful to put in a Night Force, and I would start thinking that you'd want to run, like, 3 or 4 banners of them.
It's almost like they have, like, 10 options of what they could do, and any one of them would be fine.
Yeah. And I really want I want their points to be halved and have a power reduction in that by that amount, so I can put more models on the table.
I want them to have less insane range.
Yeah. Oh, that as well.
The range is crazy.
Yeah, because the Porphyrion models are one of the best models in Titanicus. I had the most fun painting them.
Yeah, they're cool. They're cool models.
And I would love to be able to run a full lance of them.
But right now they keep nerfing them because they're too good. But if you, like, nerf the weapons and took the points back down, you could. And I think they're a little bit too durable.
Even if you didn't, they wouldn't be that bad.
No, yeah, that's not, like, the top priority. You're right.
But yeah, they've got to rewrite that card. And if you're going to rewrite that card, you may as well relook at the Cerastus cards as well, because the Cerastus aren't quite there.
The Questoris?
The Lancers just...
Or the Cerastus?
The Cerastus. Because I think the Lancer is just too much of the obvious choice.
Yeah, that's true, but still, like, okay, whatever. That's fine. That's fine to me.
Yeah, the Questoris are fine. And then the whole building of lances needs to be rewritten. I mean, I've gone about it last episode, but it's just...
Well, and the way that they come in the box is a problem. But they can't fix that. Like, there's no cost-effective way to fix the weapons that they give you in the box. That's another problem is, like, with the Questoris, not really with the other two, but with the Questoris, if you've built you've built banners to support Titans, you need completely different banners to build lances. So it's not like you can make them do double duty. And magnetizing them is not super easy either. It's not super hard, but it's not. I done them on mine, but I don't really like playing with knights myself. I don't mind playing against them, but I don't like.
I don't mind playing with knights when I'm running a household. I actually don't like putting them in a Titan list because they're just very different. And I'm very happy I've got my whole household together now because I feel like I've got my knights I can play with if I want to.
And I think your household's pretty solid. I think it's like fun to play against without being too over the top. I really like where it's at. Like, I had a good time.
Well, I think we'll leave it here. We sort of been around the block on everything, so...
That sounds great.
Once again, a huge thanks to Lucas for appearing on this show and giving me his time to talk to me about those games we played. And I should probably add a massive thanks to him again for having me down in Texas to play those games in the first place. It was an absolute pleasure hanging out with him and his family and rolling some dice to watch some Titans explode. I hope everyone enjoyed our conversation and has found some useful piece of information to use in your own games. Please, as always, give me feedback on this topic and any future topic you wish to see on this show. Please email me at god.engine.cast@gmail.com. You can reach out to me through Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, where I am the God Engine Cast. And I suppose this is an appropriate time to thank everyone who's reached out with episode ideas. In the last few days, I reached out over several channels on Facebook asking for folk to suggest potential topics for me to discuss. I've been overwhelmed with some fantastic suggestions. I'm currently going through the list, hammering them out into a schedule, and I should start putting out some new shows with some of those interesting topics in a week or so. I'm probably going to take a week off from podcasting as I enjoyed the start of the summer holidays with my kids, but before we know it, we'll be back to almost weekly episodes. So with all that said, I'll see you in a week or so. Thank you again for listening to another episode of the God Engine Cast, a podcast dedicated to discussing the Adeptus Titanicus game produced by Games Workshop. This show was written, recorded, and edited by Martin Emery. This podcast is completely unofficial and no way endorsed by Games Workshop Limited. No challenge to any trademarks or copyrights are intended. All rights are reserved by their respective owners. If you have questions for the show, please email me at god.engine.cast@gmail.com or reach out to me through Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter, where I am the God Engine Cast. Until next time, I wish you all well and good fortune.